Welcome to Literally Books, the podcast. My name is Magda,
And I'm Lindsay.
and today's episode is going to be all about the best first lines of a book. I think it's the perfect topic as we're just starting out our year.
Yeah, best starts to book, best start to the year. That's
Uh,
how we're going to set the tone for this year.
let's do
Right?
it. Exactly. Yeah,
We're going to
100%.
will a good year into existence.
100%. I guess before we get started, though, we took a little bit of a break. So, what have you been reading? How are you?
I know, I've missed this so much. I'm going to totally pretend like I haven't seen you a bunch of times since we've been off.
It's been a full month, Lindsay.
Yeah, I read a lot because I wanted to hit my reading goal this year, which was 50 books. And I know for some people they were like, I read 3,000 books. I'm not that good, and I read a bunch of books that were over 800 pages, so I got where I got.
No, I completely agree. And I think, I'm sorry, this
No.
is like a side tangent. I hate when people have like, I read 300 books. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
feel like page count matters the most because I had a little bit of a higher number, but I read a lot of short stories or graphical novels. So I don't think that really counts. And I think it's all about entertainment and enjoyment. I don't know. I feel like that's the most important thing for us to keep in
Yeah, I
mind.
agree. And I also really hate this like binge culture of reading. I read 3,000 books this year. Like I don't I think there is a limit to what you can consume and then still really process and enjoy. And then I think we were talking to a friend of the pod, Wale, about this, the Hot Girl Books on Instagram. But she
Mhm.
was saying something that I thought was really poignant, which was how much are you really interacting with other people if you're reading 700 books a year? Like, you are taking that time away from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my rant my rant about this year. But what am I reading? Is that what you asked me? Because I
Yeah.
don't.
So what have you been reading? I guess we just came back from the holidays. So what have you been reading?
Okay, so there's a few things I'm going to call out that were like sort of on the tail end of my reading journey that I can't not talk about, which is Orbital by Samantha Harvey, which won the Booker Prize last year. It's a very short book, like over only a couple hundred pages, and it's about people living on the International Space Station through one day of their life. And it was so beautifully written. It makes perfect sense that it won the Booker Prize because it was beautiful, beautiful prose. It wasn't like the most gripping storyline. It's truly just like the them reflecting upon their time orbiting over Earth and the things that are going on at home and how they feel being in space. But I really liked it. It's a short one. And then the other one and then I'll shut up. I promise. I'm blathering this morning. I'm really excited, I guess, about everything I read. We talked about this on our Instagram, but Chain Gang All Stars by Nanakwame Ajay Brenya. I cannot tell you the ways in which this book messed up my brain. I loved it, but it's basically a sort of near future world in which prisoners can opt into a NFL style blood sport that is a fight to the death. And if they last 3 years on the Chain Gang as Chain Gang All Stars, they can win their freedom. And it's an amazing book, but it's so interesting because to enjoy it is also to be complicit in the goriness of it and the bloodlust of it. And that's sort of what the book does. It like draws you in with this really intense, gory storyline and then says, why are you enjoying this? Like, what is it about our society that makes people okay with observing behavior like this? And then it's got a really great critique of the prison system. I loved it.
I can't wait. I think you have totally influenced me, and I actually put this on my 25 books to read in 2025. So no pressure, Lindsay. I hope it lives up to the hype. Just kidding. I'm just
It's
kidding. I'm
so
sure
good.
it
It's a
will.
it's a thinker. Anyway, what about you? What have you been reading?
Nothing as intellectual as yours. Mine have been just very fun reads over the break. Um, so the very first one, which I was really surprised that I liked it because I don't consider myself to like a lot of like holiday specific reads outside of October because I like little
We love a
spooky
spooky
witchy
read. Yeah.
books. Yeah, but for like Christmas and those type of holidays, like I'm not a really big fan of it. But there was this book called The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter, and I've been seeing it around, and it lives up to the hype, Lindsay. It is really good. It is a whodunit. If you liked Knives Out, you're gonna enjoy this book. There's a lot of plot twists, and it revolves around like these mystery writers are kind of get invited to this like really famous writer's house, and they have to solve the mystery of her disappearance. And there's like a whole bunch of like suspects, and it has a little bit of a romance story. It was just such a fun, easy read. I consumed that in like 2 days, and it is totally worth the hype. I I do consider that I don't think we have to be in December to read this. So if anybody out there is like, "Oh, I missed the train." You haven't. I promise you there's so much more to it than just like a Christmas read. It was a fantastic story. Really, really great job.
I've seen so many people that love that book.
It's
It's got a chokehold on people. And it has a
it's
cute
good.
cover.
Yeah, it's a really cute cover. It's like a little cartoonish type of style, kind of like what do you call it? Like a pulp
Yeah, pulpy cover.
inspired
Uh-huh.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's cute. It's really cute. And then the other one that I also read, because I still kind of obsessed with like a little bit of spy kind of stories because of Elias Emma, which is one of my favorite reads last year. I read The Spy and I by Tiana Smith, and it was just a fun, silly spy novel, like romance kind of novel. It has to deal a lot with like a mixed identity type of thing, where like this woman that is supposed to be like a hacker finds out that her sister is part of like the CIA, and like she gets like a mixed identity type of situation, and she gets thrown into the world of espionage without her even knowing about it. It was pretty fantastic. It was great. Just a fun, exciting read. I don't think it's gonna change anybody's world, but if you're just looking for pure enjoyment, totally recommend this read. But yeah, it was really good. Anyways, do you want to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be right back with some book news? Welcome back, everybody. So now we're gonna get into some book news, and I'm gonna pass it over to Lindsay, who's gonna get us started.
I am reticent to even start us on this because you said it's the gift that keeps on giving. I feel like it's the itch that keeps on, or the scratch that keeps on itching. I can't. It's so annoying, which is the Blake Lively Justin Baldoni drama continues. Blake Lively has filed a complaint alleging sexual misconduct, harassment, and an intentional smear campaign. She has indicted Justin Baldoni, lead producer of the film, Jamie Heath, various PR agents. She claimed Mr. Baldoni had improvised unwanted kissing and discussed his sex life, including encounters in which he said he may not have received consent. And Mr. Heath had shown her a live video of his wife naked. The suit includes text messages between Baldoni and his PR and crisis management teams, indicating potentially an intentional desire to mar her name in the public.
This whole drama over a Colleen Hoover book, it is mind boggling to me. I did finally find it because I have read all of the documentation that went into this,
So have I.
The New York Times articles.
Mhm.
Also kind of getting ready to read Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, because he's suing the New York Times for $250 million for saying that they didn't do
For
their due
libel.
diligence.
Yeah.
And then he's also getting ready to sue Blake Lively and team. And he said that he's actually going to be releasing absolutely 100% of all communication between the two parties through text, emails, everything, because he says that he has enough proof to say that everything that she cited is completely false. So I just feel like this is going to be dragging on for months, if not years. And you know how I said in our thankful episode, I was thankful for this drama? I'm not thankful for this anymore. Like, this is just like, it will not stop.
It will not stop. And I think here is the tricky thing about it too, is I think people are very much like in the camp of being like, I'm on Justin's side, I'm on Blake's side. And I think the difficulty at the end of this is like they both kind of are terrible, in their own ways. Like I think they both are just very unsympathetic characters. And at the end of the day, like the sexual misconduct things are troubling. I think there is definitely a culture around Hollywood that permits this kind of behavior, and that's absolutely not okay in any instance, no matter how much you like Justin Baldoni. Not okay. Don't talk about your sex life
Mhm.
with your coworkers. Like that should be a very obvious boundary to set. What makes it so complicated is that you have the Ryan Reynolds of it all, who has inserted himself into this conversation, and there's an obvious power imbalance between his clout and Justin Baldoni's clout, and it makes people really not want to root for Goliath. It's hard to root for this couple that kind of sucks and treated this movie as a little fun romp when it was about domestic violence. And I'm not saying that Blake Lively did not experience bad things on set. I think it's extremely possible that she did. It's just a situation where I'm like, I don't really care about either of you. I think you guys both suck, honestly.
Yeah, I think two things can be true, right? I
Yeah,
don't think it's either one or the other for sure. So we'll see what happens. I'm just so over it. Like I keep getting again all of my algorithms
I
all about
know.
this drama, and I'm like, make it stop, please. I don't care.
Yes.
Both of you guys are super rich. You know, one thing though that kind of annoyed me about Blake and Justin Baldoni's comments, they both said this comment that they said that the movie was a flop. This movie was not a flop. I just want to
I think it
reiterate that.
commercially was a flop though. No? Did it make a lot
No,
of money?
it made like $250 million on a
Oh.
$30 million budget.
Okay,
Like
well then
this
not a
is
flop.
not a flop.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe with the critics, I mean, I do say like the movie is significantly better than the book, but I mean the source material was
I mean, you knew
pretty
what you were getting
crappy.
into, my guy. Like, it's a
Exactly.
pretty. Her name is Lily Bloom. You weren't going to be up for any Oscars.
Exactly. So I don't know why they both keep referring to this as flop. Maybe it's what you just mentioned. Maybe it's like no awards or anything like that. I think honestly they all did pretty good. The acting wise, I was really impressed with it, and it kind of sold me on it from everybody's side. But yeah, I just kind of irked me that they're like this movie was a flop, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. You guys made a crap ton of money on
Yeah.
this movie. It
It,
was not a flop.
thank you. It was always going to be like a good Lifetime movie. Like that was
Exactly.
where it was going to sit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Exactly.
well, this is the last time I think we should ever talk about this. I have a feeling it's going to come up
Agreed.
again, but I really don't want to. So, you want to take us
Yeah.
into the next story?
Yeah, let's do that. All right, on some really good news, the New Jersey governor has signed a law blocking book bans, which prohibits public schools and libraries from banning books and protecting librarians who obey state laws. New Jersey is following on the footsteps of California, which is also prohibiting libraries from banning books, which is, this has been an ongoing situation all across the nation. So it's kind of great. Murphy, who signed the Freedom to Read Act, comes amid an ongoing push by lawmakers and activists across the country to challenge books they consider inappropriate for minors, particularly those around the LGBTQ issues and race. So, really happy to see that we're kind of making some improvements in making sure that we kind of stop with the book bans, man.
I love this kind of protection. It's amazing.
Yes, especially for the librarians too, because we do know that there's some states that are actually pursuing like criminal charges for librarians, and I'm like, come on, you
It's
guys.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
Librarians should
crazy.
not be an edgy job, although I do love
Yes.
it.
Oh my
Justice
god,
for
that's funny.
librarians. Our next story is a list of the most borrowed books from public libraries in 2024, and a lot of them we have talked about on this podcast quite a bit. They include The Women by Kristen Hanna, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaros, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, Think Twice by Harlan Coben, Camino Ghost by John Grisham, and The Demon of Unrest, a sage of hubris, heartbreak, and heroism at the dawn of the Civil War by Eric Larson, who is a great historical writer.
I was wondering if you knew what that last one was. I was just like, I don't think I've ever heard of this book.
That author, Eric Larson, wrote The Devil in the White City. He's written a number of books. He's really, really solid at writing nonfiction, historical nonfiction in a really palatable way. So I love to see this list. It's super diverse.
Way to go, readers. I love that.
Well, it's diverse in topic, maybe not in author. Maybe I want to comment back. I just meant in
Genre.
in genre. Yeah, look at that list. I'm like, maybe not.
I got you. I know you meant genres. I know that's what you meant. All right, and then just to close things out, over the holidays, 600 booksellers received $500 holiday bonuses from author James Patterson, who has been awarding independent store employees this type of bonuses since 2015. Patterson has given millions of dollars to schools, libraries, and literacy programs, and actually, in 2015, the National Book Foundation presented him with an honorary National Book Award, the Literarian Award, for outstanding service to the American literary community. So, way to go, James.
That's so cool. I love
that. We'll be right back with the best first lines of a book. All right, welcome back, everybody. So now we're going to be chatting about our favorite line openers or paragraph openers of books and like what do we think versus what the critics think.
Yes. What's the thing that draws you into the book? I think this is like arguably maybe one of the hardest parts of writing is a strong opening line, the most important thing in writing.
I completely agree because it might not be. I'm the kind of person that allows the book to kind of get into like the first chapter to allow it to kind of hook me in. And then kind of like after I'm done reading it, I go back to the first opening paragraph just to kind of gauge if we get like any type of clues or anything and how good the first opening line is compared after we've read the book. And I think that's changed my mind about a lot of like books in the past of like the first line openings. I feel we're gonna talk about this, but for instance, the Harry Potter one, it seems like a very ordinary one, but like after you read everything and you kind of go back to that first line paragraph opening, it's just so, I don't know, it just kind of sets everything up. It's just so great.
It sets the tone.
Yeah,
It sets
exactly.
the tone. Yeah, I actually, I think I saw this like on, I don't know, I'm sure I saw it on Instagram or some social
Hmm.
media thing. But it was writing recommendations from Chuck Palahniuk. Do you know him?
I don't
He
know who that
wrote
is.
Fight Club,
Okay. Hmm.
and like his writing is a little, I would say it's maybe not my favorite tone, but he's a great writer. And one of the things that he said was like try and write for 6 months without using any thought words, meaning like he wondered or she like was contemplating or whatever, and said instead use action words and then to work up to the feeling of the thought word that you're talking about. So like she wondered if he was mad at her
Hmm.
is the example he gave, and then he'd be like, um, she hadn't spoken aloud for 3 minutes and he was staring at her wondering, or like, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
something
Like,
like that.
yeah, exactly. And it was just like, oh man, that's so effective.
That's hard to
I
do.
know.
Wow. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I admire writers. I am not a good creative writer. Like that's definitely a skill that I do not possess. And it is just so amazing to me because we were going through some of these first line openers and some of them are like, how do you even come up with that? Like it is just like so perfect and encapsulates the entire book in a paragraph that is gonna just set you up for like an amazing read. And that's a lot of pressure, but it's like if it's done well, holy crap, more power to you.
Agree.
Yeah.
I think we should get into them. You are a good creative writer, by the
Yeah.
way.
Y- I'm decent, but I feel like there's so many like really good, talented people out there, you know? Like there's just anyways, I don't know how to take a compliment. Just take it
No,
back.
I'm leaving that in. That's funny. Okay, so let's
Okay.
go. I think we've written down a few of our favorites.
Yes.
I think you should go first.
All
What's one of your
right.
first favorite?
So I think this is a pretty classic one, and I think this is kind of with one that I totally agree with the critics with, which is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which was written in 1953. And the opening line is, "It was a pleasure to burn."
It's
Like chills,
chills.
chills. Like that's, I mean, it's just such a simple line, but it just tells you everything about like what the book is gonna take you through. So if you guys are not familiar, here's a quick synopsis of Fahrenheit 451. It presents a future American society where books have been outlawed and firemen burn any that are found. The novel follows Guy Montag, a fireman who soon becomes disillusioned with his role of censoring literature and destroying knowledge, eventually quitting his job and committing himself to the preservation of literary and cultural writings. And it is a very this book was written in the 1950s, but I think we've talked quite a bit about book bans in
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
podcast. So I think in where we're at right now in the world,
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very real thing. And like we have been seeing, like I think we talked about it, like one of the universities in Florida that was dumping books and
Right.
throwing them into a dumpster. Obviously they were not burning them, but it's just one step closer to that. But it just kind of, I don't know, it's just like very much a very powerful sentence, I think. It was a pleasure to burn. It is simple, but it's effective. And it's just going to take you through the whole path of the book of like how society has kind of let us down. And it was actually the apathy of the citizens that kind of got us to that point in the book, that they were just okay with letting this um, government just kind of like fully destroy a lot of the literature and then what it means for us to kind of learn as a society. So I don't know, one of my favorites. I love it so much.
Yeah, and if you think about, I mean, how much that one sentence is doing, because one, it piques your curiosity because you're like, what does that mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
does that, and is it a euphemism? Or is it like metaphorical? Is it, and like
Mm-hmm.
you learn, of course, that it's like literal.
Yeah.
And then it also like it sets you on the beginning of the character arc
Yes.
too. Like that's a hard thing to do in like 7 words.
Exactly. Like and it kind of like allows you to kind of end it in both ways. Like it was a pleasure to burn the books, that's where you're starting out, but it was also a pleasure to potentially try to take on this type of like society where like people don't care anymore. So it just kind of takes you through that. Like that's such a that's such a good way of putting it. Like it is setting you through that journey of what the character is gonna go through.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really love it. I think this is a really important book. If you haven't read it, please go check it out. It's still worth it. There's also a show that was great. I haven't watched it. I
I
think it
haven't
was
either.
in FX or something. I can't remember. Maybe it's HBO. Maybe. I don't know. But I'll check it out. But anyways, yeah, that's my first one. What about you?
Okay, it's funny because we have 2 science fiction books to start us out.
Oh, okay.
Mine is All This Happened, More or Less, from Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. And so I don't even know how to a lot of these, like, I don't even know how to give a short synopsis of this book. But at a high level, it's a science fiction war novel that follows Billy Pilgrim, an American soldier whose experiences as a prisoner of war after the bombing of Dresden during World War II cause complex PTSD. And there is time travel in the book, so there are various jumps in time in the perspective. And we're following Billy's kind of experience. And why I love it is I love an unreliable narrator. And I think it's so funny. Like I mean, it's a fiction book, right? So it's like a little meta, like wink at the audience. But it's also just like anytime that you're approaching a book from one character's perspective, it's so hard to be objective. And I like that he just like surfaces that. It's silly and like poetic at the same time.
And it's one of those openings that I think it seems like you kind of say these type of words in your daily life, and like somebody had the guts to kind of put it down on paper, and it may seem like an ordinary thing, but it just kind of sets you up for what this book is going to do
Right.
so perfectly well.
And like there are things in the book, like there are aliens in the book,
Mhm.
and they're like crazy things that happened. So you're like, wait,
Did
is
it?
this like is it true? It's like it sets you up so much. It just sets aside disbelief for you like
Mhm.
immediately.
I totally understand that, and like I think I'm with you. I haven't read too many like unreliable narrators books, but like I think this is just it took the cake.
All right, what's your next one?
I don't think this should come as a surprise to anybody that I put Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen in here. I think we should all know this opening paragraph by heart. So it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
It's perfect.
It is perfect. But again, I think this is one of those that when I first read the book, it didn't catch my attention. It was like after I finished reading the book that I kind of go back and reopen it. That is kind of like it gives you kind of like the chills. And I think I don't know. This is just my personal thoughts. I don't know what other people think about this, but it is kind of like it's mocking a little bit that
Yeah.
society, and I love that so much. Like that just kind of tells you a lot about who Jane Austen is. That she's a very witty writer, especially for that time, and it's making fun of that society. That is like, well, if this guy had money, of course he must want to marry somebody. Like there's no question about it, because if you don't think that's true, then why are you in this society? It's just so perfect, and I love how witty that is. And I don't know if people kind of, at least that's the feeling that I got.
No, it's sarcastic.
Yeah.
That's why it's funny because it's like a truth
It's,
universally acknowledged. Idiots,
it's
like
so good.
everyone knows this. It is. It's funny.
Yeah, so I love it so much, and I think it's perfect. I actually this is something that I've been looking for to buy. Is kind of getting like one of those really cool like art frames where like it has like the entire
Yeah.
opening, so I can hang in my office. So I've been on the I haven't found the perfect one, but I've been looking for that, and I'm gonna hang it up in my wall. 'Cause this, as we all know, this is my favorite book ever.
Yeah.
So of course, I need to. But yeah, that's my second one.
And it's like it's a perfect nod to who Elizabeth is as a person because she is so like resistant
Mm,
to societal norms, and it's sort of like setting her up as like smart and sarcastic and like totally not wanting,
yep.
to play her part in society.
Exactly. You are so right. Like it just sets her up so nicely because she's so strong minded. She knows who she is. And she's just like, I don't want to play with this society, even if I'm just going to end up alone, like starving. Like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And, her dad fully supports her.
We love that. That's
Ah,
allyship.
exactly. I love it. I love it. So, yeah, that's my favorite. If you do not know Pride and Prejudice, I'm still gonna read you a synopsis, but where have you been? You need to go read this book. So Elizabeth Bennet learns the repercussions of hasty judgments and comes to appreciate the differences between superficial versus actual goodness when it comes to the arrogant Mr. Darcy. I'm not gonna say anything else about that because I think we all know this enemies to lovers classic, but go read it, go watch the movie, go watch the series.
You know what I'm observing too? We have a recurring theme in this
Ooh,
podcast
tell me.
of niceness and kindness, like niceness versus kindness and goodness. Like it keeps coming up.
This is like our third or fourth episode
I
where like
know.
this has come up, and it's crazy. When I was writing this down last night, I'm like, huh, this is very similar to what we just talked about in
Yeah.
our last spooky episodes. But I think you're right. I think you're onto something.
It's
Uh,
like, yeah, I mean, it's like the themes of this podcast: childhood trauma, what is nice,
yeah.
what is considered literature. Like these are the
We're very philosophical over here,
yes,
believe it or not.
we have
Uh,
many
yeah.
thoughts on things and stuff.
And stuff. Yeah, very lots of thoughts. All right, what about you? What's your next one?
My next one is this is my favorite book in all the world, though I have never read
I
it.
knew you were gonna put this one in here. I love
That's
it.
William
Ah,
Goldman's The Princess Bride.
I love it so much. And it's funny because I have never read this book, but that is such a famous quote. And that's something that I want us to kind of chat about later because there's so many of these opening lines that are so famous that I
Mhm.
have never read the book, but they're just like everybody knows them.
Is it famous? Tell me more. I feel like maybe that I don't like observe that as much
Mhm.
because like I've read the book, so like I just I don't know.
It is one of those that always kind of comes up quite frequently in either like when I'm reading some of like, I don't know, book articles or something. And like
Oh.
it always comes up as one of those like a really well executed first opening lines because it kind of gets you like it's funny, it's witty, and like it just kind of gets you going then on like a what the author is gonna take you through this book that is kind of like a funny hero book, right?
Yeah.
Story.
But the reason that I love this opener so much is like one, it piques your curiosity. You're like, what do you mean? And also like who is talking to me right now? I'm reading the book. Am I like you become this person and then it's like a story within a story. I don't know. I love that setup. And it's weird and it's funny. I don't know.
No, I believe it. Like I feel like maybe it's kind of allowed the reader to just kind of give the illusion that they're actually being read to as well. So maybe that's kind of what that
Yes,
is.
that
It's
is.
cool.
You
Yeah.
become this kid and you're
Yeah.
like, "What do you mean you've never read it?" It's a perfect like again, all of these, it sets the
Mm-hmm.
perfect tone. It's like it's weird, it piques your curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
You're all like already like, "Wait, if it's your favorite book, is it going to be my favorite book?" Which it is. Yeah, one of them.
The next one I picked, it's a kind of a newer one, but I kind of wanted to select something that it was like more recently written. And I think it was one of those like I think we were both kind of obsessed with it when it came out
Of
last
course.
year.
Yep.
So it's going to be Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which came out in 2023. And the first opening paragraph is conscription day is always the deadliest. Maybe that's why the sunrise is especially beautiful this morning because I know it might be my last. And it's one of those that it does it so well because I remember when I first picked up this book, I was immediately hooked. Because I'm like, well, what is conscription day?
Right.
Like, why is she gonna die? Like, what's happening? And I think this is one of those chapters I think the first chapter in this book is so
I
strong
agree.
because it just throws you straight into the action
Mhm.
and you have no idea why, like what's going on. And you just like slowly start kind of learning about like what's happening, like what were all the forces that kind of put Violet into this type of position. I don't know. It was just so wonderfully done. And it's a very new book, but I think they did like the author did an amazing job in kind of immediately hooking us.
People forget this because of all the book top talk hype around Fourth Wing. So like I do feel like when I hear people talk about this book, it's always like in extremes. Like it's either the best book or the worst book. And the writing itself gets sort of lost in the discussion about like fan theories and things like that. But like just the story, to your point about when you first read it, it is so solid. The
Hmm.
writing is solid. It's super like it's like it's super engaging. It to your point, you start in the action. You start with questions that you want answers to, and that's
Hmm.
what leads you along through the story. And I think this is like an absolutely great choice because I don't think Rebecca Yarros gets enough props for like how good her writing is.
I completely agree. Like everybody knows about the storytelling, and I think we kind of talked about this with like the Write Aloud podcast,
Hmm.
where like what is the good writing versus storytelling, and like I think this is one of those cases where we have both.
I
'Cause we
agree.
normally always are like, oh, it's just like a great story, and we just can't look away.
Right.
But like she writes really well. Like I mean, it just immediately hooks you, and everything was just so well done. And yeah, I love it. And then if you are not familiar with Fourth Wing, where have you been? You need to go read it. But a quick synopsis of it is Violet and Wrangle. What? Oh, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I have not.
Sorengale?
Sorengale? Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so. Sorry, fantasy fangirls, fans out there. I know that I've only read it. I haven't done the audiobook for this. Violet Sorengale was supposed to be a scribe, but instead is forced by her general mother to join the Dragon Rider Squadron, where the only way to live is by graduating or dying. And then a lot more stuff happens, but that's the shortest synopsis I can give of that book.
Look, the point of this
Uh,
episode is to draw you in the first line, not to give you like complete stories of the books. Go read these. They're
yeah,
great.
yeah, I promise you, we are not letting you down with these options. All right, what about you? What's your last one?
Okay, this one I feel like I had to pick because one, it's one of my favorite books. I told you it's one of my formative books. But also it's just the most classic opener of all time. And it was a dark and stormy night. And I'm choosing the iteration from A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, although she was not the first person to write this. The origination of that phrase, it was a dark and stormy night, was actually by Sir Edward George Earl Bulwer Lytton. That's a real mouthful of a name, in his book Paul Clifford, written in 1830. But of course, that phrase is like such a cliche at this point. It's like been written 17,000 times. But I love it in the context of A Wrinkle in Time because it's a children's book. So I feel like it sets the tone for like drama in a way that's pretty like the drama that's to come in the book, that's like very low stakes, and it's silly, it's ironic. So
I did not know that there was like this drama behind this particular sentence that it had been used a few times before, or maybe just once before, but I didn't know that.
It was a dark and stormy night is almost, it's like it's a jokey cliche. Like if you will hear it all the time in like shows, it was a dark and stormy night,
Yeah.
because it's a way to like use the weather to set a tone for like something foreboding that's
Yeah.
about to happen. And so like, and like Madeline L'Engle is using this, years and years after it was originally written. So she
Right.
knows that. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it's so funny. And of course, A Wrinkle in Time follows Meg Murray, her brother Charles Wallace, and their friend Calvin O'Keefe as they set off on a journey to find Meg's father, a scientist who's been missing for over a year. It's sort of a jokey way to set the tone for like the adventure that's to come. And also the book is just amazing. And it's like, it's so complex for a children's book, I think.
Like this was not a book that I grew up reading, but I do know there's like a movie that came out, but I think I was way too old when the movie came out. So I just never watched it. I don't know the story
Oh,
that
the Ava
well.
DuVernay one?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of the better adaptations are a few,
Yeah.
but I think this book is really hard to adapt, in my opinion. And I've talked a million times before about why I love
Mm-hmm.
it, but I'm going to say it again. One of the things that makes this book so good is that in the search for Meg's father, it really does fall to the kids and to her, to Meg specifically, to solve problems without the help of adults. And that's like why, and they have like these three older female characters that are sort of guiding along the way, but ultimately it's up to Meg. And so I don't know, it's just a solid book about like facing danger and being brave and working through problems as a
Yeah.
kid.
All right. Anything else on our favorite quotes before we
No.
jump into the critics ones?
Yeah, let's go to the critics
All
ones.
right.
I'm curious how many of these you've read.
So the first one, I think I have not read the book, but it is so. I think something we were talking about is so famous.
It's a dark and stormy night, kind
Yeah.
of quintessential. Yeah.
Exactly, which is it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And this is a Charles Dickens story, A Tale of Two Cities, which was written in 1859. And it just seems like a very classical thing that just kind of shows up in a lot of pop culture in movies or when people are chatting or whatever, that you just kind of see it come up anywhere. I have not read this book.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I have
I
not
just
read
have
it.
no interest.
Oh, yes, I'm so glad I'm not the only one that hasn't read this. I have read, some Charles Dickens in the past because for school.
I love Great Expectations.
Yeah, like
One of
we
my
have to
favorite
read
books,
that.
but
it seems like it's a very good opener, honestly.
It's a good opener
Yeah.
because it's like anything that's a dichotomy, like saying
Yeah.
like this is an absolutely true tale, kind of,
Yeah.
right? Like anything that's sort of like, wait, what? I think that is kind of a consistent theme in some of these
Yeah.
is like setting up two kind of inverse ideals in one sentence.
Yes,
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. I think it's like our favorites. Yeah, I love that. Here's the next one. And I'm hoping you have read this book because I haven't. And this one kept coming up in all of the lists and maybe controversial opinion. I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, which is Call Me Ishmael, which is Moby Dick by Herman Melville, written in
I
1851.
hate this book. I hate this line. I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Like, why is this so famous? Or like, and I wish I could talk. And I was trying to go into like a whole deep dive of like, why is this considered a good opening? And like, I was reading some of the critics like explanations of it. And I'm like, it's still not a good opener.
It literally isn't. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I
It
don't
doesn't pique your
understand.
curiosity. You're
Yes.
like, I don't want to call you anything. I guess it's maybe because it's speaking directly to the reader. I don't know. And that's something
Maybe.
like I liked about my Princess Bride
Yeah.
opener, but still it's
Yeah.
it's
So
boring.
okay. Yeah. So maybe I'm like Lindsay. She's super smart. She might be able to tell me why this is good.
No, it's
Okay.
stupid.
I'm glad. Okay. Good. Good. Good.
Okay, this next one though
Oh,
is on my it's so funny because like I think you and I have both talked about this book a couple of times and I do love the book, but it's hard to get through. But the sentence is a solid one.
it's so good. Okay. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. And it's really good. Like it just kind of sets you up. It is a really hard name to say in anglicized way. Sorry about that. So you say Coronel Aureliano Buendia. I'm just gonna call him like that because I cannot.
Say it, yeah, say it
I
properly. We
cannot
should
say
learn to
that.
say yeah.
But I think it's so good because again, it's gonna offer you that shock value, and then it takes you back into like this nostalgic place at the same time, and it just kind of takes you through this like it's a very fantastical story of like this town and like multi generational
We didn't even say the name of
family.
the book
Oh my god, I
because
didn't
we're
even
so
join it.
excited by the sentence. Maybe this should have been on our list.
Oh my god. So if you guys don't know, it is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which was written in 1967. Um yeah, sorry. Thank you for calling that out. I got so
I know because
excited.
it's a great. This wasn't on either of our lists because I think like we both like the book, but it doesn't. I don't think it
One of our
speaks to
favorites. Yeah.
either of us. But it like yeah, it's like you're like, well, tell me more about the firing squad. Why are you
Hmm.
discovering ice? It establishes your main character. Like it
Hmm.
does so many things. Come on, Herman Melville, catch up.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Call me Ishmael. Like, I
It's
don't
like not
understand.
no.
I'm
Sorry.
just gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna open up all of our podcasts that way because apparently it's legendary. Call me Magda.
call call me Magda.
uh,
Uh,
maybe call her daddy was into something about it.
Call her daddy is the better iteration of this.
Which
Call her
is
daddy's a better opener. Yeah.
then call me
Yeah.
Ishmael. Oh my god. Anyways. All right, this next one. Do you want to read it? I don't know what your thoughts are on this one.
I love this one.
Me
So,
too.
okay. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive are proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is one of those that I think we were talking about. Okay, and if you guys don't know, sorry, we want to make the same mistake. This is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling, written in 1997.
Or the Philosopher's Stone, depending
Yeah,
on where you are in the world.
that is
Yes.
true. It's like the Sorcerer's Stone was here in the US and the
yes.
Philosopher's Stone was in the UK, right?
Yes.
It's fascinating. I wonder how that translated to all the languages
I wonder
too.
that too. Yeah.
Hmm. And I don't know. I read this in English, so I don't know the name in Spanish, but we'll find out. But yeah, this one, it's a really good one. But this is one of those that I think we were talking about earlier that when I first read it, it was like it didn't catch my attention, but it was after I finished the entire series and you kind of go back to that first paragraph that it just kind of gives you a comfort, grounding feeling to the whole series.
Yeah. It's interesting too that they mentioned the Dursleys first and not Harry.
Exactly. It's weird. Yeah. You know, you're right. So like I like it now, but it doesn't introduce us to the character. I think it's all about the normalcy aspect that it's kind of trying to kind of hook us in of like, okay, what is considered normal maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of where it's
And I
trying to
like
take
the
us.
tone of it. I like the thank you very much. It's funny. It's like,
Sassy.
but it is I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's why it's not on my favorite. I like the tone of it. I like the sentence, but I
Mhm.
do think it's weird. Like you're gonna start a book with the Dursleys. Who cares
Mhm.
about the Dursleys?
Yeah, and you know, they're only in there for like a little bit part of the story. They're
Right.
not even that much, no. But okay, but I think it's more of a mm, nostalgic. It's like a
Yeah.
nostalgia feeling when I'm reading this rather than it's really good. The next one up is All Children Except One Grow Up. This is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, written in 1904. And I think this is a pretty good, strong opener as well because it tells you what you're going to get into with Peter Pan.
I agree. And do you know the story behind J.M. Barrie, the author?
Mm-mm.
So he was very ill for a lot of his childhood. And I think if I recall, I'm sorry, I'm going to half recall the details of this, but he basically had a relationship with his mother she was abusive toward him. And so he was like very malnourished and very small. And so he had basically like a childlike physicality into adulthood. And so some people think that nod to like remaining a child is because of his experience and like a way to process this like abuse that he suffered through the character of Peter Pan.
Oh, this is so sad. Like that is such a sad story, and like it's a children's story and everything, and there are some very dark themes in this particular story, of
Hmm.
course, as all the 1800s children's stories
Of
do.
course.
But that just makes me even so sad that this was kind of potentially him kind of working through some of his issues and like mental stuff. That kind of
I
sucks.
know. It's really interesting though. And
Yeah.
it does make this line a lot more interesting.
And more powerful in
Yeah.
itself.
Hmm.
All children except one grew up. Oh, because you probably felt like so alone too.
Yeah.
So oh, okay, that kinda gets me. Okay, that's really good then.
Go
That's
down a
really
rabbit
good.
hole of reading about J.M. Barrie. It's actually fascinating.
Wanna read the next one?
It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. This comes from George Orwell's 1984.
No, it's not my favorite, but I totally get what the author is trying to do with the striking of 13, which is kinda giving you this thing of like somebody trying to convince you of something and trying like I don't know, it feels like it's like a gaslighting type of moment in a way, which I think kinda goes really well
That's an
with the theme of
interesting
the
read
book.
on this. I like
That's
that.
kinda what I think because I'm like, there's obviously no 13 when you're striking a clock. It's only gonna go up to 12. Doesn't matter what you do unless you're doing an analog, but that doesn't read as an analog clock.
Right.
So I feel like it's just like it kind of sets the tone of like somebody, a big brother, for instance, big brother is gonna tell you like it's 13, I promise you. You gotta believe me. Like that's what I'm telling you. So it just kind of sets up like
It's so
I think it
interesting.
does it. I don't know, that's kind of the vibe that I get from it. So I
Yeah.
think it kind of makes sense for this story of the book.
See, my take on it is like it's setting you up in a world that is not your reality. Like you're
Mm.
starting in a world that's different from our reality where clocks go to 12, but I like your reading too. Again, like these are why opening lines can be
Yeah.
so fascinating to read it as especially as you like look back on them to your point earlier after reading the book, like you really a good first line makes the rest of the book make sense. This was fun.
Yeah, it was
I'm
really good.
it's going to make me a lot more it's so funny because I went through a bunch of books that I thought like, "Oh, these are books that I really like" last night and, like, it's kind of crazy how many of them where I was just like, "This isn't that great of an opening line," and it really does speak to, like, how freaking hard it is to
Mhm.
do that and, like, how much a good line sticks out. I'm like, I'm gonna be so much more attentive to it moving forward.
Yeah, same. Like, like I'm normally the kind of person that kind of gives like a whole chapter to be able to kind of
Yeah.
suck me in into the story. But like, maybe I should be, no, I don't want to be more judgmental on the opening line. But like, I think to your point, I'm going to be a little bit more observant and maybe critical.
Appreciative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate. Maybe that's a better word than critical.
Well, you'll appreciate
Uh,
the good ones more, I think,
exactly. Yeah. So totally agree. Well, thank you for listening to Literally Books, the podcast.
where we say what we read.
And we mean what we say. Bye.